On your desk, in your pocket, in the cloud. They are everywhere. Two companies, two titans, Microsoft and Apple. For decades, we've seen their rivalry as a simple choice, PC versus Mac. Business versus creativity. But that's the marketing. The real story is a war. A war fought not with soldiers, but with code. A war of brilliant minds, cunning strategies, and one of the most famous betrayals in business history. This is the story of how a nerdy college dropout built an empire by making the perfect enemy. ACT1. The nerds and the hippie. Our story begins in the digital Wild West of the 1970s. In one corner, you have these two, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, certified geniuses, obsessed with a single, audacious dream, a computer on every desk and in every home. They weren't cool. They weren't stylish. They were nerds who dropped out of Harvard to start a tiny company called Microsoft. Visual animation showing the original Microsoft logo. Quick montage of early computer magazines and circuit boards. And in the other corner, you had these guys, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the hippie and the wizard. Their company, Apple, wasn't just building computers. They were creating art. Their machines were elegant, user-friendly, and for the first time, personal computers were cool. For a while, they were allies in a world dominated by the gray, corporate giant, IBM. In 1980, IBM decided they needed an operating system for their new PC, and they needed it fast. In what would become the single most important business deal in tech history, they went to Bill Gates. The problem? Microsoft didn't have an operating system to sell. So, did Bill admit it? Of course not. In a move of legendary cunning, he promised IBM the world. Then, he quietly went and bought a quick and dirty operating system from another small Seattle company for $50,000. He polished it up, renamed it MS-DOS, and licensed it to IBM. But here's the genius part. He didn't sell it exclusively. He retained the rights to sell MS-DOS to any other computer manufacturer. IBM had just built the stadium, and Bill Gates was now selling tickets to every single person who wanted to enter. ACT2, the empire of Windows, and just like that, the floodgates opened. While Apple meticulously controlled its hardware and software, Microsoft's OS was everywhere. They had become the standard. But text on a black screen was ugly. The future, as Steve Jobs knew, was graphical. It was pictures, icons, a mouse. Apple's Macintosh was a masterpiece, a revolution. And Microsoft was actually developing software for the Mac. Jobs showed Gates the technology, trusting him as a partner. And then, it happened. In 1985, Microsoft released Windows. To Steve Jobs, it was a cheap, ugly clone, a blatant ripoff. He was furious. He famously screamed at Gates, "I trusted you, and now you're stealing from us." Gates's legendary reply was cold as ice. "Well, Steve, I think there's more than one way of looking at it. I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox and I broke into his house to steal the TV set and found out that you had already stolen it." This was the start of the PC-Mac war. And for the next decade, Microsoft didn't just win. They dominated. The launch of Windows 95 wasn't a software release. It was a cultural phenomenon. The tech equivalent of the Beatles landing in America. Microsoft was on top of the world. An untouchable, unstoppable empire. ACT3. The fall and the phoenix, but empires attract attention. And Microsoft's ruthless business practices had made them the villain. The U.S. government sued them for being a monopoly. The company that had once been the underdog was now seen as a bully. And while Microsoft was fighting for its life in court, the enemy they had forgotten was plotting a comeback. Steve Jobs returned to a nearly bankrupt Apple and did the impossible. He simplified, he focused on design, and he changed the world. Again, the iPod killed the Walkman. The iPhone killed the flip phone. Apple became the most valuable company in the world, while Microsoft, under its new CEO Steve Ballmer, seemed lost. They were a giant, but a slow, clumsy one, completely missing the mobile revolution. The empire was crumbling, but then a new king was crowned. In 2014, Satya Nadella took over, and he did something no one expected. He declared peace. He ended the wars. Microsoft started making its best software for Apple's iPhone. They embraced collaboration. They focused on the cloud, on artificial intelligence. They stopped trying to be the coolest company in the room and focused on being the most useful. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, not as an empire, but as a platform for everyone. Today, The rivalry continues, but it's a different kind of war. A war for the cloud, for AI, for the future of how we work and live. The story of Microsoft versus Apple isn't just about who won or lost. It's the story of how competition, even a dirty, ruthless one, can push humanity forward. It's a story that's still being written, right here on our desktops.